1 week season.
1 week season, fam. La Familia. Welcome back. It is another week of Wake and Snake. My name is Mike Johnson, mjohnson86. I am your host. Of course, we are bringing you your Best Ball Plus 2025 subscription. This is on our YouTube channel, so we should have some new viewers as the NFL training camps are starting to ramp up. We're starting to get some news, so we've got a little bit more to talk about. It's go time now. We're going to start seeing a lot of things happening. We're going to see ADP shifts. We're going to see injuries. We're going to have a lot to react to and discuss each week. There's a lot going on in the NFL. Honestly, there's a lot going on the last 3 or 4 days. There's been 2 or 3 things we're going to touch on in depth today as we go through an NFL draft. Of course, we are drafting on Drafters today, as we usually do. If you have not played on Drafters before, if you use code OWS on your first deposit, 100% deposit match up to $100. Again, use code OWS. We have our 1 week season Best Ball Plus subscription available. Go to oneweekseason.com. $29 for the Best Ball Basics. That is just the written stuff, the rankings. If you're just kind of dipping your toes in, that might be where you want to start. And then our Best Ball Plus, we go deeper into game theory and strategy for these contests. We are drafting already. So without further ado, I am going to go ahead and bring in my esteemed colleague, Billy Gabelman, while I pull up our draft board today. Billy, how are we today?
Mike, I'm doing great. It's always good to be back being an esteemed colleague again. I know we had a little bit of a hiatus, so excited to be back, top of mind of being a premier co-host here. But how was the weekend for you, my friend?
You've kept the streak going pretty well. Week is going well. I believe, we have a couple of, I think the Lions and Chargers have opened their rookie camp just because they play in the NFL Hall of Fame game on Thursday, July 21st or 31st, excuse me. Mm-hmm. And then later this week, most of the rest of the rookies will report later this week. And things are going to get, we're already starting to see some things. We had a bit of news this morning, some more news over the weekend, and then some situations kind of playing out. So, there's about a month after minicamp in June where, we're kind of biding our time, twiddling our thumbs, kind of getting lost in our thoughts, but now a little more to act on. So, it's basically go time from now through February, basically.
Yeah, my wife is ecstatic about that news.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be, I think you'll see a couple different, things happen over the next couple of weeks. We'll continue to get more and more, actual relevant news on I don't want to call it a daily basis, but maybe, depending at when, basically every camp is going to open around this time next week. Basically everybody will be back. Rookies and veterans will be starting camps in the next 7 to 10 days. So we'll start getting a lot more news. And then I think what you'll see is people will really start to shift into NFL, and you'll start seeing a lot more casuals in your draft lobbies. I feel like if you're somebody like yourself, like myself, like I'm looking at your screen that you're sharing, and you've got, you're not quite in slow draft hell, but you've got a lot of them going on still. You probably recognize a lot of similar names in a lot of drafts. I think you're going to start to see some fresh faces, in the upcoming days or weeks. I think you'll start seeing, some fresh blood in these draft rooms.
Nice. So I concur. I was saying nice about your pick because you took Rashee Rice here at number 21. He's a guy that I am, for our subscribers, they'll know my rankings. I have him fairly low. So, I don't have much of Rice, but I'm also willing to hear the argument. And I guess I kind of get the argument, but I guess what are your expectations for him for that Kansas City receiver room, that'd be a good place, I think, for us to start our conversations out today. And then some of the other kind of more newsworthy things probably come up once we get done with that first discussion.
Yeah, for me, I feel like I have been much higher on Xavier Worthy. Have a lot of exposure to Xavier Worthy. And a lot of stuff we talk about behind the paywall, not really looking at exposures, but it's more builds and rosters and things of that nature. I just don't have a lot of Rice. And so it honestly, it just kind of felt like I don't mind taking a shot.
Okay. I was afraid you didn't know you were on the clock.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's unlikely that we see a suspension from Rice in this upcoming season. And so I think that he has upside. I mean, if he's a player who smashes and gives you wide receiver 1, 2, 3 overall, like, I don't know that that's great for it sounds like similar to you in terms of your portfolio. Like, he's not a guy I have a lot of at current ADP. I feel like the last 6 weeks he's been going kind of, we'll call it around the 2-3 turn in general, like somewhere between pick 20 and pick 30. Like, that's basically where he goes in every draft. So to me, it just kind of felt like a spot where I wanted to grab a guy. What about you? I know that you're not super high on him, but
yeah, just a guy coming off injury in this cumulative scoring format, with where he was he obviously dominated early last season, but also Travis Kelce had he had a down year, especially early. He kind of was poor early, got stronger later in the season, had a really bad, obviously, Super Bowl. But I think it's a thing where, like, I think Kelce could have a little bit of a bounce back year, in terms, or at least be a lot better than what we saw to start last year. Because I think with Rice and Worthy on the field now, even Hollywood Brown, I think Kelce's going to have more room to operate. I think last year, I think the age has clearly hit him, but also when you look at, like, there will, it's a give and take thing where he probably had some decline, but it was exaggerated by the fact that their other weapons, or lack thereof, kind of exposed him as, like, if he's a primary focus of the defense, he couldn't overcome that. So I think he might be a little bit better. Worthy obviously smashed at the end of last season. So, it's not that I don't really like Rice. It's just that second round price tag, feels a little rich to me, specifically in this format. I do like him a little more on, like, DraftKings and that sort of thing. But like I said, I'm not. It's one of those things that I kind of have a strong take on, because I think I have him ranked like 36 or 37. But I also, it's one of the handful of takes that I'm uneasy about. How they could come back to bite me.
Yeah, no, and you know what? When we're talking about Kelce, I do agree with you. I do think he did take that step back last year. I think a lot of it has to do with age. Some of it probably has to do with more spotlight, just dating Taylor Swift. But as we dial it into best ball related content, like, he was a guy, whatever that was, 2022, where he had that monster year. He's gone consistently first, second round for the previous couple of years in these fantasy drafts. He's traditionally going 8th round now, so you're getting a little bit of that discount. He's a guy I don't mind kind of taking a little bit of that risk, rolling the dice on it, because again, you're not paying first, second round, draft.
Yeah, I concur. Got Jalen Waddle there, nice pick. An OWS favorite, of course. I like that take. I also right before my last pick, Omarion Hampton was selected. He's a guy I talked about in the Discord last week. The Najee Harris, the 4th of July rumor that he had um, blown his face off. It was pretty severe, like what the rumor was saying. But it turned out, that his agent and then through Ian Rappaport, reported he did in fact have a fireworks accident. He had some facial injuries. They claim he's going to be, ready to go for camp, which again, they're the first team. They opened rookie camp on Saturday, and then the rest of their camp reports later this week. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Hampton is a guy, first round draft capital. This could be huge just from the standpoint of how are they going to approach. So even if Najee ends up fine, quote unquote, fine in the long run, um, less than 2 weeks after something blowing up in your face as a veteran, there's a good chance he doesn't participate or is very, very minorly involved, which could just mean instead of him, we see in these situations a lot, they give the nod to the veteran, right? The first team nod, where that's going to be the starter, kind of make the rookie earn it sort of mentality, which makes sense in a lot of ways. But, if you take Najee out of that equation, that could mean more first team reps for Hampton, a quicker learning curve. So he's a guy that I think is a huge upside in the 4th round. And specifically when you think about things from like, obviously, good for Najee. You never want to see someone get hurt, especially in that manner. But when you think about things from the standpoint of the reaction and how people were like, where does Hampton end up if you take Najee out of that equation? And so I think, just it didn't end up being the case where, people were like Najee's career is over sort of thing. But it's interesting to kind of think through the potential situations and how quick would that change, right? How quick would if Omarion Hampton was the only running back in Los Angeles, or like he had a 80% workload for some reason. And when you think about things from that standpoint, you realize the upside that a guy like that has. And that's what we should be targeting kind of in those mid single digit rounds, is guys who could quickly become, for regular season DFS, like all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's 7,400. So yeah, that's interesting. And then we'll kind of segue. He's of course a first round pick. But segue into where did he go?
I mean, Juwan Jennings went off the board at 61.
So Juwan Jennings off the board at pick 61. The news coming out today, Jennings demanding a new contract or a trade. Obviously, we're a week out from camp. He's 28 years old, had his big breakout last season, had just signed a new contract prior to that, but that contract was signed essentially to be the wide receiver 4. He's not making a lot of money, and obviously he's 28. 49ers definitely built to win now type of team. Their window is shortening every year, kind of with just who they have. So I guess, do you have any initial thoughts on that with Jennings, and the big picture? And we'll kind of go from there, and I'll share mine after.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a spot where with the departure of Deebo Samuel, with what we have seen or more recent news on Brandon Ayuk, who I think is pretty likely to start the season on the PUP list. I think it's kind of a situation where San Francisco probably needs to do right by Jennings. Like, I feel like this is a win now team. They've got a great squad. And there's just not a ton of depth behind Jennings. Obviously they've got CMC, they've got Kittle, they've got Ricky Pearsall, who's, a second-year wide receiver who, dealt with some adverse situations with the gunshot. You know what I mean? Like, they don't really know what they have with him, in terms of game act. Like, he hasn't played a whole lot of snaps. To me, I think it's a spot where I'm interested in Jennings. Like, there's been some beat reporter speculation on Japid Cowing, like potentially taking some of Deebo Samuel's kind of gadget plays. Like, I think to me, like, based on just draft capital, and not that I have a ton of Cowing, but like, he's a guy, like, I don't mind taking 20th round dart throws on in that, in that wide receiver room. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm probably slightly under the field, probably on Jennings and Pearsall right now, and unfortunately quite over the field in terms of ownership and on Brandon Ayuk, just because as he continues to drop in ADP, like, I find myself, it's so hard for me not to click him as my wide receiver 6, wide receiver 7, and, as he's falling into the 10th round pretty frequently. I mean, I've seen him go in the 11th round more than once.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And I think Jennings, and then our drafter at the end there selected Jennings at 61st overall, right around his ADP, but it'll be interesting to see if this affects his ADP. And then he also, that drafter also took Quinshon Judkins, the Browns rookie, with the 84th pick, slightly behind his current ADP. But Judkins, of course, was in the news this week as well. We'll get to Judkins. I'll quickly talk about the San Francisco situation. I kind of think similar to you, like, they'll figure it out. Basically, I'm interested to see, does Jennings ADP drop? And if it does, that would be great if we can get, kind of a discount on him. If not, so be it. But that's kind of where I'm at on that overall situation. Going to go ahead and take Cooper Kupp here. Reuniting Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua on my roster there. So that's kind of where I stand on the San Francisco situation. Doesn't change much of my outlook at this point, at least. I guess if we get to the point where Jennings does end up holding out, that's where you start to think about, you saw Ayuk last year with the holdout deep into camp, and then ends up getting hurt. Although it was on a contact injury, I don't think you can really blame, like, lack of conditioning or something like that. But that is something we see sometimes. So, maybe Ayuk's not the perfect example. But then Judkins was arrested early Saturday morning for domestic abuse and battery allegations, posted, I believe it was $2,500 bond. So he is, he's out now. There was a lot of initial reaction to that. I did see something today. Again, I don't want to get into, like, my opinions on this or that sort of thing. Like, if it really did happen, like, that's terrible, all that. But, we're here to talk about fantasy. The report I saw today was kind of more backstory on the situation, and the alleged incident supposedly occurred on Thursday, I think it was. Might have been earlier in the week, but it was basically his accuser spent 2 or 3 more days with him. There was a birthday party in there, and then much later, like, reported it. I'll see if I can find it. It was somewhere on Twitter, which doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but it was like a written report from a reputable source, was where the Twitter person shared the screenshot from. So, it's another interesting one. Obviously, there was a lot of discussion on Twitter, or X, I should say, in the aftermath or follow up. But yeah, I think it is another situation where I'll just kind of see what the market does and try not to overreact. If something does come from it, I don't know that Judkins, necessarily even has a suspension this season. Dylan Sampson and Jerome Ford are the other 2 running backs. And we can see, like, Chuba Hubbard last year on the Panthers. They had a very bad offense, but If a running back has a very large workload, volume is king, and they can still produce. So definitely something we'll want to be keeping an eye on. But I think that the bigger picture thing around Judkins is kind of an NFL-wide situation, which is the second round NFL rookies, 32 picks in the second round, and only the 33rd and 34th overall picks have signed contracts. And with rookies now, they could still participate in minicamp just with how the CBA is set up, but they can't participate in training camps now that are starting until they have inked a contract. And picks 35 through 64 have not. The holdup is these second round picks are, so Jaden Higgins, the 34th pick for the Texans, signed a fully guaranteed deal, which was kind of groundbreaking for second round picks. We hadn't seen that before. There's like a rookie wage scale for these picks, for these draft slots, but then terms of the contracts and guarantees are what can be negotiated. So Higgins signed one, and then the Browns, who had the 33rd overall pick, the first pick of the second round, Carson Schwessinger, the linebacker, also signed a fully guaranteed deal. So now basically all the rest of the second rounders are saying precedent's been set. We want the same. And there is, it's unprecedented. Never seen anything like it in terms of this many players, kind of in unison. It's almost like a strike. So Judkins being in that second round, I'll kind of just read off he's the first or the highest drafted skill player from that second round. Also Travion Henderson from the Patriots, Luther Burden from the Bears, Tyler Shuck from the Saints, Mason Taylor on the Jets, the tight end, Terrence Ferguson from the Jets, the tight end, from the Rams, Elijah Arroyo, tight end from the Seahawks, Trey Harris, wide receiver from the Chargers, who is probably going to go here pretty soon. Luther Burden, I already said him. Jack Besh, wide receiver for the Raiders. And then RJ Harvey is the running back for the Broncos, the last second round pick with fantasy relevance. So that's a lot of names, and that's a lot of guys who, some of these guys are, you talk about Henderson and Harvey are, 6th round picks right now. There's it's a lot. There's a lot going on there in terms of large scale, a lot of skill players potentially being impacted, not just those players, but how it shakes up the depth chart, how it shakes up everything playing out. So that's going to be a huge thing to keep an eye on the next week or two. Do you have any thoughts on like specific players or situations that how you see it playing out, or just players that it's scaring you off of, I guess?
I think for me, I do think it affects running backs a little bit less than wide receivers, where, as rookies. I think I'm potentially hitting the brakes or tapping the brakes a little bit on some of these, your Trey Harris, for example. Not that I have a ton of him already, but like, I feel like it's tougher for a rookie to come in and learn the playbook, a little bit more expansive for them than a running back. I feel like I have less concerns on the rookie running backs. RJ Harvey's a guy that I find myself clicking a lot. I think one of our subscribers, the Tycoon over here at pick 68, took him right in front of. Had he fallen, I for sure am taking him at pick 69. Nice. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I find myself clicking a lot at his draft capital. I mean, he's not a guy that I'm sure is going to start the season. Like, I think that J.K. Dobbins again veteran. I wouldn't be surprised to see Dobbins kind of start the season as the starter. But Harvey's a guy that I personally like a lot. I know we try not to get too player takey in these. He's a guy on the rookie class that I just like his draft capital typically in the 6th round. And I like his upside on a Denver offense that I do feel is going to run the ball a good amount again this year.
Yeah, and I kind of touched on that as well in the Discord this last week when it first came up, just like the receivers, just it's more nuanced and kind of the opposite of what I talked about with Najee Harris, and how him being out could potentially lead to more opportunities for Hampton, and Hampton kind of being able to assert himself quicker if Harris misses some practice time early in camp, that sort of thing. Kind of on the opposite side here, especially at the wide receiver position, some of these guys could really fall off, could fall behind, especially if they are in more competitive depth charts, right? So you look at, sorry, I'm going to make a pick here quick.
Yeah, no, in terms of the competitiveness of the depth chart, yeah, 100%.
So, you look at, specific guys. So like, I'm going to kind of just go through the list, I guess, as we keep drafting. Obviously, Higgins has signed his contract. There's nothing affected there. But the next, the next skill player in the 2nd round is Quinshon Judkins, who we talked about. So he's a guy who I'm not avoiding because of the domestic abuse allegations, but I did drop him in the ranks, and he's a guy I won't be targeting as much, more so because it's, their overall offense doesn't look that great. Mm-hmm. And to me, this is a bigger concern because him and Dylan Sampson was a guy who I was pretty high on as a prospect coming in. The Browns took both of them. Sampson's already signed. He's a 4th round pick. Talent wise, he's probably better than that. He's not like at other positions. Sometimes 4th rounders are guys you just cut. And then Jerome Ford, who, obviously knows the offense, knows the playbook. So those are guys that it's not the domestic abuse allegations, but I could see them being more relevant than we had thought. Travion Henderson, that potentially gives a little bit of a bump to Ramondre Stevenson. If Henderson, kind of the flip of the Hampton and Harris situation. You look at Luther Burden, 2nd rounder. He missed some time with hamstring injury. He's had soft tissue stuff going on. But we talk about that Bills situation, Roma Dunze and DJ Moore, the top options there. After that, it's Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland. Loveland coming off a shoulder injury. And then Luther Burden as kind of that next wide receiver. Well, you've got Olamide Zaccheaus was signed. He's kind of the 4th wide receiver for the Bears. But also Cole Kmet, is a guy that I've talked about before. And now all of a sudden, we've talked about him as, perhaps having a role as Loveland comes back from injury. Perhaps they play more 2 tight end stuff, but also like Kmet could be, if Luther Burden, if this plays out and he takes a while to get into camp and he's had some soft tissue injuries, that Kmet story really starts to play out. We talked about the Saints. We talk about the Saints a lot. Like Tyler Shuck, if you're a quarterback and you're going to start as a rookie, it's going to be a problem if he's not in camp. So, those are some ones. You look at the Elijah Arroyo, who I have been really high on. Terrence Ferguson, tight end for the Rams. If Ferguson doesn't show up like this, that makes those Tyler Higbee late round shares pretty interesting. Quentin Johnston, I thought the drafter who took his screen name Get Off My Face, drafting from the 9th slot, took Quentin Johnston in the 12th round, which is a bit of a reach, it would seem, but if Trey Harris is the first notable rookie to hold out because the Chargers reported on Saturday, Quentin Johnston, very, very intriguing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree with you. I know you're on the clock. I feel like Quentin Johnston's a guy I've been taking a lot more recently in the last week or two. For one, just that reason, but two, and again, you mentioned to it, like he's a guy who typically falls. Like this is one of the few times that I've seen him go before ADP. I feel like you see him fall quite a bit.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see if I think that was kind of a sharp reach, just in terms of like kind of being ahead of it.
Yeah, and the Herbert drafter is to his left.
Yeah, and just I'll be interested to see how that reaction is, to see if I guess the market starts seeing some of these things, these like second and third level effects. Jack Besh, the Raiders wide receiver, second round, who some people have been higher on, his ADP has dropped, but now all of a sudden you look at like a guy like Trey Tucker as maybe a late round pick, how that could, potentially affect things. So yeah, I think there's a lot here. Maybe they all just sign, everybody falls into line within the next week, but it seems like the NFL and the NFLPA are kind of like drawing a line in the sand. It's like the NFLPA is trying to like get everyone to hold the line and kind of set a precedent. And it'll be really interesting because I feel like it's a much bigger picture issue at this point than any one player just being like, okay, yeah, I want to go into camp.
Yeah, agreed. I think that if one or two of them fold, you'll start to see the dominoes fall and more will sign. But if they will stay united and all of them hold out, I think that you may see, again, as you were alluding to, some more wide sweeping potential changes in the CBA and things like that just in the future.
Yeah, and that's where like I'm wondering, like I feel like there's something bigger at play, like behind the scenes. Are these players being funded or being given guarantees by the NFLPA to kind of hold the line, don't give in, because they're trying to set a precedent again here. That's what I'm really curious about. Is it really as simple as like, can you get a couple of these guys to fold and then the others start thinking about their career? Are they able to kind of break them? That'll be the interesting thing to see how it plays out for sure.
One of the things I don't think gets talked about probably at all, but for a lot of these guys, they may have been making more in college on NIL deals.
Well, that's the other thing is, are these players now, and now we're getting off.
We're really in the weeds, but that's okay.
But we're really in the weeds. The NIL thing is real. And so are a lot of these players, all these guys that were drafted in the second round likely actually have the means to see this through. Whereas, in the past, maybe guys were, needed to sign to get that initial, few $100,000 signing bonus, help their families kind of, get themselves squared away. A lot of these guys, especially the guys from bigger schools, probably, were making very, very solid money, as it were in 2024. So definitely a lot going on there. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Like I said, just kind of going through those players, like there's orders of magnitude how the effects we could see. And I think a lot of it is kind of unquantifiable. Like we're not going to figure it out. So, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it'll be it'll be good. So we talked about San Francisco, we talked about Cleveland situation, we talked about these second round holdouts. I know you're on the clock.
I picked Samson, I grabbed him.
It's a bummer. That's what I was going to take.
Sorry about that. That's what happens when you have 4 consecutive OWS logos.
I see that. Disbanded brother would want you to know that he's a big fan of your piano in your virtual background. Just wanted you to know.
Oh yeah, maybe I'll play something. Maybe I'll play something next week. um, yeah. Sorry, where were we?
You're good. I'm
Oh,
just
you're on the
figuring out
clock.
what I want to do.
Okay. Calvin Austin. There you go.
Haven't taken a wide receiver since round 8. Feels like let's get a little bit more depth there.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm looking in our Discord. I'm looking in the chat. If there's any specific situations, anyone who's tuned in wants to talk about on any team or any injuries or anything newsworthy we didn't cover, please throw it either into Discord or into the chat. We try to keep these streams, for those of you who haven't tuned in before, try to keep them high level. As you see, a lot of OWS subscribers in this draft from 5, 10, and there may be some others who aren't rocking a flag. But yeah, we try to keep this, not too theoretical. Just try to keep a lot of that stuff behind the paywall. But if there are specific situations you guys are interested in hearing our thoughts on, please throw them into the chat.
Yeah. So I'm gonna quick touch on. I like the Brashard Smith situation. He's another interesting one that I've kind of come around on in my rankings. The main reason, basically, just being how you look at the totality of that team, and with Hunt's age and Pacheco's coming off a leg injury and was kind of ineffective last season. I think Smith, a later round rookie running back, but we've seen the Chiefs, like, they're willing to just go with whoever produces. They're not tied to a specific, they're not a big spender at the running back position. So they're going to, if Smith can get the job done, he's going to be on the field for a very, very good offense. So definitely like that pick.
Yeah, they're not tied to it. I mean, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago when they took Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round, and he's not even on the team anymore. If you're not producing, if you're not protecting Patrick Mahomes, they'll move on. So yeah, I mean, he's a guy I don't mind. This is probably the earliest I've taken Smith, in like the 17th round. But again, to me, once you get past like the 15th round, like 16, 17, like I don't think that ADP matters at this point. Like take the guys that make sense for your roster. Doesn't matter if they're a round or 2 before ADP. It's not important at this point. I think it's values are so grouped together so tightly at this point in the draft. And a lot of it, certainly this part of the season, still May, June, early July, before training camps, like a lot of it is dart throws. Like we don't know what situations are how they're going to play out in camp. So if they're guys that make sense for your build, I don't care that he's got an ADP at 220. If you like him at 196, take him a round or 2 early. It doesn't matter.
Right. For sure.
That's at least my opinion.
Yeah. And I think that, we see that play out a lot of times. And it's one thing I've talked about at length on our premium subscriptions is how we use those late round picks, especially on drafters and DraftKings, where they have 20 rounds. You get a couple more picks, but just kind of being aware of how you're using those later picks and understanding that really from the 16th to 20th round, it's kind of the Wild West. So, just because a guy, there isn't that much difference in projection, and the roles are usually pretty fragile for all the players drafted in those rounds. And there are some ways that we can kind of leverage that in certain spots that we can be more aggressive with, I guess. But just certainly something we want to keep in mind as we're drafting. See Russell Wilson go off the board. Jackson Dart also still on the board. Interesting.
I said maybe I might snag him. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know that I need him. We'll see.
Who do we have so far? Dak and Tua.
I like that they both have a little bit later buys because I don't foresee if he's there at 237 maybe.
Yeah.
Richardson's still on the board too. Like those are guys that we talk about, in Discord a good bit. Even Hilo has chimed in quite a bit on late round quarterbacks and his thoughts specifically on the indie guys. So
Malik Washington, another StatATL fave, goes off the board.
He's a StatATL fave when I've got Tua. When I feel like I like leaning into the correlation a little bit more. Certainly in the later rounds, if I'm just taking a dart throw, I don't mind having a little bit more correlation.
Gotcha. So you took Kyron in the 4th round. It's interesting to see Kyron fall. Not a guy that I am bending over backwards to get, but also he's been very productive the last couple of years. We've seen McVay trusts him. Believe he's got a new contract this year. It's interesting to see a guy that's played at that level, scored so many touchdowns, and we project that team to be very good and that offense to be very good. And he's just not an exciting pick, I feel like, for people. I think sometimes psychologically you see that happen, especially with a guy like him who 2 years ago people were able to get him in the 17th, 18th, 19th rounds, and he dominated. So then it feels like you're overpaying for him if you pay that higher capital. So
I know he's a guy, if I'm at the 12 hole, he's a guy that certainly if I start wide receiver, he's a guy that I think that's around his ADP. I think he probably is a 34, 35 ADP. He's a guy, if I'm at the 12 hole, he's a guy I feel like I find myself not wanting to pass on at 36, past ADP, first pick of the 4th round. Or I feel like I don't pass on him. And I feel like a lot of times later when, if you see him fall into the 40s, I feel like I take him a lot in the 40s.
For sure.
Decision. Do I want to go Jackson Dart or do I take a 3rd tight end? You want to weigh in on my quick build?
Yeah, I mean, my thought would be tight end. I think that with Lamb being your 1st round pick, you've got him tied to Dak. So just from the standpoint of, if Lamb is doing what you need your 1st round pick to do,
Dak is probably giving me enough.
Dak is probably playing the whole season. And I think that, we see tight ends get hurt more. They, having that 3rd guy potentially could help you in the flex as well. So just a little bit more that I like for that specific build. I could see it going the other way as well if the team was built a little bit differently.
So out of curiosity, I want to ask you a question. So at pick, whatever it was, 235, and maybe this is more strategy for behind the paywall type stuff. In that situation, for me, I'm probably taking the guy that I ended up taking, Ja'Tavion Sanders, even if it means doubling up my week 14 bye week. Just because you've got Bryce Young as well. I'm curious, was there specific thinking of why you went away from him to Komet? Komet's a guy I like as well as a 20th round dart throw. Just more curious behind your thinking, or some of it is, hey, we're talking on stream. I'm drafting. I'm hosting. It's a lot just keeping it all together.
No, I think, just Komet, I talked about the burden situation before. I think there's a reasonable path to Cole Komet kind of playing this. We sit here a month from now, right, on August 14th, and there's one preseason game down, bunch of joint practices, and Cole Komet could have been playing 70-80% of the offensive snaps for a very good offense on the Bears. And then, he's a 4 or 5 rounds earlier pick. I'm not overly concerned with stacking, Sanders with Bryce Young, just from the standpoint of this team specifically. I took Brock Bowers in the 2nd round. I took Lamar in the 3rd. not normally a build that I take.
Third tight end. Yeah.
But no, I mean taking a quarterback and tight end in the first 3 rounds. Not, I don't have many builds that end up like this. But if I am building like that, I don't know that like the Young Sanders stack, what does it look like when that quote unquote hits? Does it even hit the lineup? So from that standpoint, to me, Kmet versus Sanders is more of just like it's an individual decision between those two players. And specifically with Kmet, with all of the second round situation going on, I'm looking for an upside pick there. I'm looking for like, Cole Kmet, he's had multiple 20-plus point games in each of the last couple seasons, and now the offense could be, far better than it has been. So just kind of the upside scenario, how that could play out. I saw that as stronger for Kmet.
Sure. Wasn't questioning, more just curious.
No, yeah, that's the point of it, right? Talk through it and why we're thinking what we're thinking. So yeah, I'll share for the listeners on the podcast stream. My roster was a 2-7-8-3 build. Quarterbacks Lamar Jackson and Bryce Young. Running backs David Montgomery, Zach Charbonnet, Ray Davis, Rashad White, Isaac Garendo, Dylan Sampson, and Jarquez Hunter. Wide receivers Puka Nacua, Tet McMillan, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Cooper Kupp, Rashad Bateman, Michael Wilson, and Jalen Coker. And tight ends Brock Bowers, Theo Johnson, and Cole Kmet. So yeah, not a ton. I do have the double stacks on both Lamar and Bryce Young. Wasn't really like something I was like looking to do or intending to do or targeting. I took Lamar early, so waited on that second quarterback, keep my QB quotient down. Got Bryce Young 16 picks after ADP, which worked out nice because I did have Tet McMillan. Again, I don't like to reach for stacks, but if they fall to me, that's fine. And of course, if Tet pays off as my wide receiver 2 and has that big rookie year as a top 10 NFL pick, Bryce Young is probably going to have some weeks where he might be able to help out Lamar. Ironically, 2 years ago on my 7th place team, had a 2-quarterback build with Lamar Jackson and CJ Stroud. So maybe Young and McMillan could be this year's Stroud and Nico from that season, although Stroud was the rookie in that scenario. But just an interesting that the roster looks somewhat similar there. And also Puka Nacua, a holdover from that 7th place roster as well. Do you want to talk about yours quick, and then we'll let the people go about their Mondays?
Yeah, sure. I want to talk theoretics. One question, because I think both of us actually built. I mean, I don't want to say sort of similar because it's not all that similar. But the roster construction is the same with 2-7-8-3. My question to you, because I feel like your running back room is similar to mine, in that we both kind of have more of, I want to call it that anchor. I feel like mine is a bit stronger. But like your week 1-esque type starter in Kyron Williams, and then basically every other running back on my build is a guy that I feel like I need an injury to really get strong weeks out of. And it's something that I've been doing a decent amount, similar builds like this, where maybe I'll go 2-8-8-2 or 2-7-8-3 on this, where I'm basically taking 6 running backs in this situation where I'm kind of waiting on potential injury news. It's something that I really like doing in May, June, July, like before camps, because I feel like if you get a major injury in camp or something, preseason, like these type of, if Devon Achane goes down in camp, like, Jalen Wright's ADP is going to go up 5 rounds. That's just kind of my thing. I'm just kind of curious on your opinion. We don't really talk about this much, and maybe if this is something we want to save for Discord, that's fine too. Just more curious. and then I can run through my team.
Sorry. So what is the specific question?
Like just your thoughts around taking so many dart throws at running back versus trying to spend a little bit more capital and getting two guys that are.
I think it's got to be calculated with the types of players, and then specifically with certain situations, like if things do break right for them, what does that even mean? Because there are certain players who, like Braylon Allen is a guy that I'm not as high on as you are. My concern with him is, like, let's say Breece Hall even goes down. I don't know how much that. I don't see him as a guy that he becomes like this massive workload type guy. I think Isaiah Davis is still involved there. But I do think Allen he kind of fits this build decently well, because I think he has a role to start the season regardless. So this team, you might not get that injury that you need for a couple weeks or a few weeks. And if Allen has a couple games where he has 70 yards and a touchdown with a couple catches, that could be huge for you. Just kind of helping carry the water, till things break how you need them. I think for sure it's a type of thing. I think some of these builds become riskier the deeper into camp you get. But there's a lot of different ways you can go to with it, and there's a lot of nuance, with each pick that you have to keep in mind.
Yep, no doubt. I know we're at 50 minutes. Let me just go quick. We go 2, 7, 8, 3, Dak and Tua. Running backs, Kyron Williams, Travion Henderson, Jalen Wright, Braylon Allen, Tank Bigsby, Rashad Smith, Taj Brooks. Wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb, Rashee Rice, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jalen Waddle, Deebo Samuel, Michael Pittman, Calvin Austin, Malik Washington, and then 3 tight ends with Ingram, Kraft, and Jontavian Sanders.
I was muted. Real quick, Mad Sox joins every week. Came in late this week, has a question. Said he just got here. How high do you see Samson rising and Judkins falling? Obviously, I drafted Samson here. To quickly answer the question, I think maybe 14th, 15th round for Samson.
Agreed.
I think all picks in those range are kind of similar outlook. We talked about, like 15th to 20th round. So I think it makes sense that he would rise and be towards kind of the top of that group. Judkins, I think he's probably like a 9th round pick at this point. That could fall further if he does not report. There's just a lot going on with the 2nd round rookie situation and his allegations. At some point, he's probably going to become a value, because I don't expect. Just my read on the situation right now, we're not looking at like a looming huge suspension. His problems probably lie more in the Browns' offensive outlook. So that is a lot. Felt like I talked a lot there. This was good. We had a lot to discuss and a lot going on. And I would imagine that we're only going to have more as the season draws closer. Do you have any parting shots?
No, man. I love that these shows were finally getting some news. I feel like May and June and even early July, a lot of times these shows are a little bit tougher, as this is really designed not just around us drafting, but really talking about news and situations and things. And they're just, in the dog days of summer here in June, there's just not a lot of news. So it's makes it a lot easier when there's a lot more things to talk about.
Concur. Well, once again, my name is Mike Johnson, mjohnson86. He is Billy Gabelman, StatATL. We are 1 week season. Check us out, oneweekseason.com. Get over to Drafters, hop in. Their $20 main event contest. If you take first place in the cumulative scoring 17-week contest, can turn it into $500,000. Don't forget to use our promo code. Again, check us out. Best Ball Basics, $29. Best Ball Plus, $79. Thank you all for joining us. We will be back.
Big week, Mike.
What's that?
Big week. I know. I got to get it in. It's one of the best weeks of the year. It's the Open Championship this week, buddy.
I was crushing the outro and you just interrupted me.
This is important, Mike. This is important.
Yeah. And Billy will be sleep deprived after staying up or waking up early for the Open Championship for the next few days. So we'll be back next week with champion golfer of the year crowned to discuss, and
John Rahm.
All right, there it is. And lots more training camp news to discuss. So thank you all again for tuning in. We'll be back. Goodbye.
1 week season.